Arganissima, New York. Your exotic skin, hair, and beauty source, and your one-stop shop for all your natural and organic skin and hair care, featuring authentic organic Moroccan oil and prickly pear seed oil and much more. Bringing you only the best, straight from the source and proudly produced in the USA. So what are you waiting for? Shop today. Arganissima, New York. Your beauty is our duty.
All right. Welcome. Hello, doctor. How are you?
I'm well, thanks, Hurricane. How are you today?
Doing terrific. As always, I would say, great day, great everything. Can't complain.
Right.
Well, first of all, as always, thank you for making the time. Again, from the future to the past, the usual.
Yeah, that's fine. And always, it's wonderful to be here, Hurricane, because as you know, we have people out there that are struggling with the way life is going, the direction the world is going, and struggling in their personal lives. And we're here for them. We're here to sort of make sure that they have some tips, some direction, some guidance. And it's also entertaining, Hurricane, to sort of think, how can we do better in life? It seems to be something that we humans like to do.
Listen, Doc, it is, you're right. I mean, this world is just, we always talk about it and it's never ending. It's always something going on.
Yeah, there is.
It's amazing, but listen, it is what it is, right? We got to deal with it. It's the easy way to deal with it. Right? Accept it for what it's worth and work through it. So, and I think we're doing our best. I know your doctor doing a lot of work out there. I love, by the way, I admire your work out there. I see your posts and things. I just saw your post today about the breathing exercise, and I reposted it. And love it. I used it.
Thank you, Hurricane. Yeah,
it works. It works for me. It works for everybody. So last month we had an interesting discussion, and we left it off. We were talking about the bipolar, diagnosis.
Yes.
And we didn't have the whole time to continue the discussion, so we said that we're going to touch on a little bit. So hopefully we'll be able to do some of that today. That's all. We'll start with that. I just switched the screen, so we are cool. I'm looking at you, and also on Instagram we're live, and unfortunately in Instagram it's a little funny because what it does, when you're on StreamYard, it kind of splits the screen, so they're not centered. We're not centered, but I will replay it right on it, and so people are listening right now, but they might not be able to get it, in the right way. Before we get started, just give me 1 second, Doc. I almost disappeared there on the screen, my virtual, I became a little transparent for a minute there. So, but hey, it's all good. All right. So Doc, let's talk about that. I mean, we were talking about bipolar, and
yes.
We have not finished the discussion. And I think there was a part of the question. I'm going to repeat the question just so, for our audiences today. So the question was, I watched your show about dealing with bipolar disorder, and I would like first, Dr. Heim, to expand on this diagnosis and its impact on life. Also, what is double personality or define, and how can someone identify if they suffer from it, David? This was a show that I had done, and I guess the question came after that, and we're just want to address that as well.
Yeah. So we want to address David's question as to what bipolar disorder is and how it impacts somebody's life. And bipolar affective disorder, in a sense, it's the most biological illness that we have in psychiatry, and yet it's filled with controversy. So psychiatry looks at a little Bible, which is called the DSM-4, where there's a consensus of how to diagnose these things. But bipolar disorder is something that suffers from knowing what to categorize, knowing how to diagnose it, because there are various differences and ideas. For example, it's normal for all of us to get sad even really sad. It's normal for all of us to get happy, even really happy, and euphoric at times. But at what point does it become a disorder? And at what point is it still normal? And so the criteria that we use is actually functioning. If you can get on with your day-to-day life, if you can still keep down your job, if you are getting on well with the people around you and not losing your relationships, then whatever you're going through is normal. But if your mood suffers to the point where you can't get on with your job, you can't get on with the people around you, and it is something that is relieved by medication, then that becomes what we call bipolar disorder. Now, the impact of this on somebody's life is actually huge. Firstly, bipolar is a diagnosis that can affect anybody from any walks of life, and it has a really close association with people who are really creative. So there are musicians like Robert Schumann that probably had bipolar, writers like Sylvia Plath and Ernest Hemingway that probably had bipolar, and visual artists like Jackson Pollock or Vincent van Gogh that probably had a form of bipolar disorder. So it's that extended emotional range that creative people have. So when you get a bipolar diagnosis, the important thing is actually to know that it is the most biological diagnosis that we have, and medications actually help. So one of the wonder drugs is lithium, and lithium has been with us for over 70 years, almost 75 years, and it saves lives. The problem is that while you're on it, you don't feel that it's saving your life. But with the diagnosis of bipolar 1 affective disorder, to be able to keep your emotions stable and within a certain range, rather than going too high or too low, can actually save lives. So that's a small overview, Hurricane, but where do you want to go with David's question now?
Well, no, so thank you, by the way, Doctor. And I know we expanded some of that last time. But
yeah.
The second part was like the double personality, I guess, diagnosis. Is there such a thing? And, in the show, I had asked the question, and, it was stated that it does exist, but, what is the actual true psychiatry definition of it?
Yeah, okay. So bipolar disorder and what used to be called multiple personality disorder, okay, are two separate things. So bipolar disorder used to be called manic depressive disorder, but people didn't want this word manic as part of their diagnosis because they see it as having sort of negative connotations, okay? And bipolar is actually a much better term for it because it describes what's going on, that the two ends of our personality or our emotional range is too much in both directions. But multiple personality disorder is a different thing altogether. And it is still in the DSM-5, but we call it a dissociative identity disorder. Now we're into an area which is controversial even for psychiatrists. There are some psychiatrists that do not believe that this order exists. There are some psychiatrists that believe this order exists, but it's therapists that give other people this disorder. And then there are other psychiatrists that say this actually exists. And so what was it? It was a movie in the 1950s called The Many Faces of Eve. There's another movie called Sybil that explored this phenomenon. And there was a series called The United States of Tara, which was on Netflix or on social media probably about 5, maybe 8 years ago, that explored this particular diagnosis. So does the diagnosis exist? Yes, it exists. And there's a lot of body of research behind it. It's very different to bipolar. And what it is a disorder that is characterized by people having different ego states. All right. Now, this is very difficult to understand, but we talk about the subconscious mind and the conscious mind, and we kind of understand what we're talking about there. But if you think that some people can have conscious minds that are different, and we're all different in different situations, if you take that to the extreme, so you may find yourself acting one way in the presence of, let's say, your father, Hurricane. okay? Whereas with your children, you act a different way. With your work colleagues, you act a certain way. And you sort of go, okay, so I can see who I am in the midst of all of this, but sometimes it looks like I'm different people to I'm different things to different people. So that carried out to the extreme where you actually are different people, even to yourself, is the basis of what a dissociative identity disorder actually is. Now, okay, now I've got to say to you, Hurricane, I'm a bit weary about getting into areas that are very sort of, how should I put it? I won't say spooky or weird, but extreme in our experience, because I have treated people that have this experience, and it is a real disorder, and it causes a lot of problems. And sometimes we, in our curiosity, sort of look at these things and say, hey, that's really cool, or that's really strange, and it becomes entertainment to us. So out of respect to people, I don't see this as entertainment. This is something that needs to be worked on, because people are actually suffering from this, and there is therapy that can help, although often it is years and years of therapy.
Well, thank you, Doctor. And again, you're right. I mean, this is everything that we cover. It's serious stuff. I mean, you're talking about about personalities. You're talking about action that can be detrimental health-wise, or the outcomes of whatever the person may be going through can be bad, right?
Yeah.
We've covered a lot of grounds already, and we're going to continue doing this as long as we have this show going. But you're right, Doctor. It is not easy for us. When you hear a question, it's one thing, and it gives you a clarity on what it is. But for someone that's going through it, typically that is not. I don't think that person is enjoying at that point wherever they are. And to your point, going through the phase and getting through the treatment and how long, whatever it takes, it depends on the personality. I guess if someone can be treated sooner than another person, depends on how they commit and how much they put in, and how far they are, right?
Yes, that's right. Now I have to put in a real psychiatric type thing to say, because I'm concerned when people like David put divided personality together with bipolar, because there's something in those two things that kind of look the same, but they're very different. And what I do need to say is not to diagnose yourself. All right. If you feel that there is something that needs to be worked on in you, then go see a doctor and trust the doctor's diagnosis. I mean, doctors go to medical school for 7 years for a reason, to find out if there is something that should be done, or if this is something that, we can just talk about and move on from, because it's a very subspecialized area. And one of the disadvantages of our society that has a lot of information is that it's really hard to wade through information, or to know what level of information we're actually operating on. Because what is information for me is very different to information for people who are afraid that they might be going through something. And so it comes back to trust, Hurricane. If we can find doctors that we trust and build up a relationship, then we can go to a place where things can be treated if they need to be treated.
Well, Doctor, thank you so much for that, because it is. I mean, obviously the question was related to the show. So, yeah. And again, for me, I get it, because, for the most part, for someone who doesn't know, these things can be almost overlapping in a normal mind. I mean, there's no such thing as normal mind. Let me be clear. But and like the common understanding of it is like, I've actually thought they were the same myself, because that's how it can be portrayed a little bit. And, in movies and stuff, you don't know exactly what it is, because there's no diagnosis. That we are getting, feedback from a doctor such as yourself. And by the way, thank you for clarifying. I mean, you're right. Someone needs help. They should go and seek help. And there is help available almost everywhere. It's just a matter of finding. But I think you and I, we have touched on this, the idea that not everybody is willing to admit that they have a problem, or are willing to go to see a psychiatrist, or because of the stigma, because of how it's been historically portrayed. I mean, you talk to someone that going to seek mental health. Ooh, that's taboo, right? Like, we can't talk about that. It becomes very difficult. And so encouragement, is needed here. And I think, one of the things that, Doctor, you do all over the world is that you are bringing this to the people. You are bringing the idea that you can reach the doctors.
Yes, yes. And I want to talk a little bit about movies and television series, because the difference there is the purpose of movies and television series is entertainment, all right? And so we get entertained by seeing things that we find curious or bring us pleasure, bring us joy, or take us on a ride of some sort. And that's fine. But sometimes movies and television series will use very serious subjects to bring us that entertainment. And so often we look at a movie or a television series and we identify with what's going on. We think, oh, maybe that's going on in me. And that's where we cross a line between normal and identification with things that are going wrong. And I have to say to you, Hurricane, the good news is the majority of humans are actually normal. And it's normal to be resilient, that even if you go through problems in your life, it's normal for your brain and your body to be able to find a way through. In a way, that's what survival of life is. We all encounter problems, but it is part of the human spirit to look for and find a solution to move forward. And I got to say, as human beings, we actually do that really well. Okay, but there is things in our society at the moment that seem to be pushing us towards this area of mental illness and mental unhealth, if you want. And that's where sometimes this blurred line between what is science and what is entertainment is not always helpful.
Well, Doctor, you touched on something that I always debate with, because you're right. I mean, we watch movies, and you clearly stated it's entertainment, but it's also influence. It is affecting how people think, and it is almost guiding people. It's suggestive enough. It's hypnosis in a way. I mean, we've covered some of that as well. So we are basically subjected to this information, and then you become some of that, and you even behave sometimes the way it is. Yes. Depending on what character you incline to, you turn to be exactly like them, or you want to mimic them. And it becomes good or bad, depends on whoever you pick. I mean, you pick somebody that's evilish or devilish, you're going to have, similar tendencies. You pick someone, that you enjoy as a good character and good charismatic personality, whatever, helpful, charitable, you might be the same. But it is powerful enough to change people's behavior, and it is intended to. I mean, it's a marketing tool. It's the same thing as any marketing, process.
Yes, yes. And so this brings me to the idea of mentorship, because mentors are very important in all of our lives, people that we look up to. And generally speaking, the people that we look up to are people like parents, older siblings, older friends or coaches or teachers. But we now live in a world where our influence is coming from social media. So what happens is people get what I call media mentors. There are people on the internet that are there to influence you, and they do. And the thing is that we need to be very careful that we're not getting media mentors that are leading us astray. And most people now know that the way that algorithms on social media work is to get you to stay on there, to show you stuff that you want, but to manipulate you towards what other people want. So products, images that are very strong, and to keep you in certain modes of thinking. You start to follow other people and you don't even know it, because the computer is programmed to get you to follow them. So in other words, you're getting a media mentor rather than a real mentor. And it's good for us to pause and think, okay, who are the mentors in our lives? Who are the people that I admire? Who are the people that have the values that I want to emulate in life, so that my life moves in a direction that I want to? And to be able to do that consciously is actually good, so that you have some mentors in your life that guide you down the path that you actually want to go on, rather than be taken down an algorithm.
Well, thank you, Doctor. And well, so it's funny you said that about the media. Well, we are right now live on social media. We are giving it, someone can say, well, you guys are our mentors as well in a way, because you're sharing information. Which would be the case. I mean, obviously our mission is to educate, enlighten, inspire, and motivate. So therefore we are here to share. But again, I am with a specialist. I am with a doctor who is bringing real information from a perspective of medicine and psychiatry. So again, it's not just my opinion. and I would not be able to give advice about psychiatry stuff because I have no clue. But the idea of having you on and sharing, it's valuable so people can get from the source. And really, you are the resource.
And Hurricane, this is where what you do actually works brilliantly, because you use an entertaining style, you use music, you use images, so that people get entertained. But behind you, you have a team of experts, including myself, that bring information that is more scientifically based. And people listening to us at the moment are not here just for entertainment. They're here to get some answers answered. And that's really important. And that's where entertainment and scientific information can come together.
Well, I'm glad we're doing this work. And by the way, I enjoy it, and you know that. And so we do it because we really believe in it. And I know, Doctor, I mean, your time is very valuable. I mean, just the job you do is kind of expensive, and, you get, real work done and so on and so forth. But you're given your time, at least, it is an appreciated, gesture, and time is valuable, right? Time is priceless, and you are giving some of that to the people around the world. And I know you do a lot more of this. I mean, not just my show, you do other things, and for the same purpose, to help people around the world. And some people may not have access to people that have the expertise, or even if they did, they would not be able to reach out to them because of financials or whatever. Some of these answers that you give can help them, at least guide them. Ultimately, as you said, always, if someone feels there is a problem, they need to seek the help and go to the doctor and spend the time with the professional, not in just, get an answer on the question. Really, you got to go through the whole process.
Yes. And what you're touching on now, Hurricane, is very real, because there is a worldwide shortage of psychiatrists and psychologists and counselors, not because there aren't enough, but the need has become so strong. We now live in a world of 8 billion people. We are now aware of all the suffering in the world, and we actually want to bring down that suffering. So information channels like this can help people put together, let's say, values so that their life goes better. So that's why I call a lot of what I do preventative mental health. We want to get to a stage where people don't need to see a psychiatrist like me. We want people to know that they can make choices and choose their values so that their life moves in a direction towards where they want. And choice is very real, and intention is very real. But in a world that is now, it's huge. It's huge just by the sheer number of people and the sheer number of influences and the sheer number of choices. The onus is on the individual to say, well, what do I want? What direction do I want to go in? And we get fooled because pleasure, which we all enjoy, is not the same as long-term contentment, which is what we all want. But to get that long-term contentment, we have to have goals and values that require effort. We get little bits of pleasure on the way to keep us going. But if we get bogged down in reaching for instant pleasure rather than long-term contentment, that's when lives can start going off the rails. And so it's those values that we talk about, and I have talked about values in previous episodes, through which you can shape your goals that help people make the choices so that they actually get the long-term contentment that they want.
Well, thank you, Doc. And listen, it's a lot of good stuff, and we're going to continue doing it. And folks, please, do check out the channel. I mean, we are live right now, so you have an opportunity to actually, connect with us. You can call the number on the screen, or you can actually just put your information or your question on the chat box. We are live on YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, LinkedIn, VK, EMBC, Mixcloud, so Instagram. So whatever you are watching right now, you can do this. And if you watch this later on at a different time, it's a replay, but you can still send the questions to us, and we'll have them available to you. Well, the answers, at least, will be there. As always, the last Friday of every month, we have this hour, and Doctor has really committed to this, and I committed to this to bring this to you guys. So, and again, so we're live while we're doing this. You chime in if you want. So, Doctor, I want to go to the next question, although this is actually a question that just came recently. This is my question, actually. It's not from someone, because I had a show last week with a guest who actually was suffering from schizophrenia.
Yeah.
And and he lived with that for years and years, and so he was able to eventually get out of it, or at least be actively without having the same I guess challenges of schizophrenia. But in the question, we talked about it, and I wanted to just get your psychiatry specialized answer or definition for the term and for what it is for people, so at least people can understand it. Actually, I did want to bring him on the show, but I wasn't sure if that would be appropriate. So we did talk about it. Maybe I can have him come on, and maybe he can talk about his personal experience and with you as being a provider and a psychiatrist. If that's something that you want, we can do it, and if it's possible, sure, why not? So the question is basically, what is the true definition of schizophrenia, and what are the treatments available to help with it? Can someone ever be cured of it?
Okay, good question. Lots of questions there. Okay, so let's take the word schizophrenia, because it's actually a problematic word, because the word itself means a split mind, right? Which is actually not what schizophrenia is. When people first started describing schizophrenia, it was very hard to articulate what was actually going on. So the core of schizophrenia is actually what we call unreal experiences. So hallucinations, hearing things or seeing things that aren't there, or delusions, believing things that are possible but not happening, or impossible, and yet the person feels that they are real. So the essence of schizophrenia is having unreal experiences. Now, that's a real problem, because we have to make judgments about what is a real and an unreal experience. Okay, so something that becomes very important to somebody who has schizophrenia is the idea of insight. If the person knows that they're having unreal experiences, then their prognosis, so in other words, how they're going to do well with treatment, is much better, right? When somebody doesn't know that they're having unreal experiences, that becomes a real problem. So I'm going to move from one term to another. I'm going to move away from schizophrenia to a term called psychosis. And psychosis means having unreal experiences. And that overlaps now with taking certain drugs. Like if you take methamphetamines or ketamine or LSD or a variety of these drugs, you will have unreal experiences. And people like having these unreal experiences because there's a certain entertainment and pleasure value in it. However, it's usually transient, and people then come back to knowing what reality is, and it's a shared reality. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people, and I get to see them, people who have taken, let's say, marijuana, a lot of marijuana, or LSD, where they don't come back to what we know is reality. And so the psychotic experiences or the unreal experiences can linger and sometimes become, I won't say permanent, but a major feature of their life. Somebody with schizophrenia is somebody who has psychotic experiences probably due to their genetics. There is something in their genetic makeup that means that they are at risk of having unreal experiences. And the way that I look at it, Hurricane, is that anything that can go right in our body or brain can also go wrong. So just like you can get cancers, which is something going wrong, or ulcers in your stomach, which is something going wrong, or degeneration in your eyes, or diabetes, or heart disease, which are all things that are going wrong. Something like schizophrenia is something that normally works well in the brain going wrong. So I'm starting to put together a picture of something that is an illness just like any other illness that occurs in the brain because of the way the brain is wired. However, there are things that we can do to make sure that even if you suffer from something like schizophrenia, and schizophrenia is a real burden, it's a difficult disease, and it affects about 1% of the population, and that has stayed at about 1% almost throughout the world and almost since we've been recording it. There are some things that you can do to keep it under control. So the number one thing is medication, and our medications, they're not perfect, but they are better than medications used to be. But I'm actually looking at doing a study about what makes people with schizophrenia do better in society than not. And Hurricane, the answer is a family, people around them, day-to-day support, because the people that we love are part of our reality. And if the people that we love start saying this is not real, you tend to trust them more. We actually share more reality with the people that we live with and love. So in my own practice, I look at the people who have done well with schizophrenia, which is a difficult disease, or the people who have not done well. And the difference is that backing of a family and people who are there to share love, which is sharing reality. So that's a small snapshot of schizophrenia.
Well, doctor, I mean, thank you for breaking it down. I mean, it seems that it's a difficult one. And, you know, to your point, there is, you said 1%. That's still a big number when you're talking about 8 billion people on the planet.
It is a big number.
Yeah, it is huge. And unfortunately, there's other diseases and so on and so forth. But this one, to your point, is pretty difficult because if the reality realm is almost convoluted and you're not sure where you stand, that could be a problem. I mean,
yes.
This is a philosophical question. Is this a real world? What's reality? What's not reality? And
yes.
we all adjust to reality based on the set of things that are around us. If are they recurring? You know, all the things that are happening are the same. But when you start seeing things or hearing things that are different, whatever the case may be,
yes.
that changes dynamics. And you're right. I mean, if you're taking some leisure, you know, medicine or whatever you call it, like, you know, in terms of marijuana and some of these things, you know, or greens, it can be leisure, it can be fun, but also it can have some serious, severe, you know, issues that can happen.
Yes,
Message to people, be careful.
Yes, it can. And so one of the questions that comes up is, can it be cured, right? Yes. And that actually comes down to, well, what caused it in the first place, right? And for most people, taking some sort of a substance like marijuana or LSD is part of the picture of their psychosis, okay? So the thing is that, can it be cured? Well, we've got to do what we can to stop taking those substances, to stop with the LSD, to stop with the marijuana, to stop with the methamphetamines, to stop with the ecstasy, okay? And then we go through a period of time where we see if people still have unreal experiences. And if they do still have unreal experiences, then medication can help. Now, unfortunately, there are a group of people that have a strong family history of schizophrenia where having unreal experiences become part of their lives. And for those people, it becomes more important to have medication. And so we talk about managing it or controlling it rather than curing it. So we do what we can, firstly, to prevent it. Then we do what we can to treat it. And if we can take away the things that can contribute to psychosis, and I am talking about substances, drugs, then we have much more of a hope that it can actually be cured in some people, although it will be prolonged in some people as well.
Well, thank you, Doc. And you stated something that is very key to all of us and any other things, schizophrenia or otherwise, right? Yeah. You talked about when you compare people who have a strong family, you know, entourage and support system versus those who don't, right? Yeah. And that can make a difference in almost every diagnosis, right? If you have any situation, who is around you determines how quick or how easy things will go for you. And but there is a selection as well for us to have, you know, the right people around. Sometimes you don't have that choice. Sometimes you have who you have, and whether they're going to be there or not, that's a question mark. But again, for people that may know someone, understand that you can be part of that treatment. You can be part of them getting better if you contribute correctly.
Yeah. So I want to get across the idea that having schizophrenia is not a hopeless situation. Just as in heart disease, we've got really great evidence to know what contributes to heart disease. So you've got more heart disease if you're a male or if you've got a strong family history of heart disease, and you can't do anything about that. But the other things, your blood pressure, your cholesterol levels, how much exercise you have, and if you smoke, all of those things we can do something about. And we know that over the last 50 years, the amount of heart disease and heart attacks in the whole world has gone down remarkably. And we found out that it's due to those 4 things: controlling blood pressure, controlling cholesterol, stopping people from smoking, and making sure that people exercise. So the same thing is with schizophrenia. When you know what contributes to schizophrenia, if we can stop that, then you will have much more of a chance of getting on top of the schizophrenia, even though there are some things that we won't be able to stop.
Well, thank you, Doctor. So we're going to go to the next question. Now, this is almost related to something you mentioned earlier. So, and it's just coincidence it happened to be that way. So it says, I watched a movie about experimentation on people's mind, which is supposed to be based on a true event, the Stanford Prison Experiment.
Yes.
I'm curious as to why would such an experiment be conducted, and to what extent did this help the psychology world? Also, can the situation that a person is in dictate such behavior changes in the mind?
Okay.
So, sorry.
No, that's right. Thank you for hitting me with a really interesting question, Hurricane. You will be testing my memory here, because I believe the Stanford Prison Experiment was carried out in the 1970s by Stanley Milgram, and it involved people being taught to become either prisoners or warders as part of a acting experiment, but they actually took on those roles very, very strongly. Now, since this has been published, the people who were actually part of this experiment actually questioned the findings and said, no, Stanley Milgram did not influence us as much as he thinks that we did, all right? But he did this so that it sounds better in publications. So the full truth about what goes behind this, we may never know. And I don't know the particular documentary that people actually listened to or watched, but the essence of the experiment, that we can be influenced by the roles that we play and the people around us. Yeah, I got to say that's pretty robust finding, that we are actually people who can be influenced.
Well, you know, Doctor, I did watch the movie, by the way.
Oh, you did watch the movie, okay.
I did. So it is, you're right. So the movie is, there's a bunch of people that come into the experiment, to this locked prison, and they're all, you know, regular people with different walks of lives, and they're just given assignments or roles. And so like people, and some are wardens, some are, you know, inmates. And then all of a sudden, although they knew this was just, you know, fun exercise, they took on the role and became serious about it. Now, obviously, it's artistry, and in the movie, they got a little bit more dramatic. But again, I don't know how far it was from the reality or not. But it got bloody, it got, you know, crazy. People were hurting each other, and they took the role serious. And so it became, you know, unbelievable. And so when you watch them, and then at the end, they realized that, like, what just happened? You know, like they were. It showed, like, almost when they walked out of that thing, like, we thought we were somebody, but we are not. We are still who we were in the first place. So, but I love the question, because, you know, in reality, we are influenced, as we said earlier, and we can. And by the way, I can relate to this from a personal experience. Now let me explain. So in the martial arts, right, we have to wear gis, like uniforms. And I can tell you this for anyone watching and listening, even if you're a policeman or law enforcement, or any type of uniform, you know, body, right? When you wear the uniform, somehow it changes you. I am serious. Like, you become that person. Like, you know, you represent that uniform, whatever that uniform is. And like, for example, wearing normal clothes, you don't feel the same as if you're wearing the gi in a dojo. Yes. It's I can guarantee you that's just how I feel personally. You have that, it just makes you feel different. It makes you feel unique about it. You're in it. Like, you know how to do this. This is you. And it's, you know, that it's two different persons, you know, between the one that's outside of it. Although you can do the same work without a uniform, but the uniform gives you some sort of a high. I don't know what it is, but it changes the way and maybe that's a question to you, Doctor. Is there a chemical, you know, in the mind that it gets triggered, or whatever it is, but it does change you, how you feel. And I know, even if you wear just a regular fatigues and think that, you know, like I've done paintballing, you know, and so in paintball, you dress up like in the military and you go into a real action, you know, with fun stuff, right? But it is a real scenario. and you get real. I mean, it gets really serious. I mean, some people really go nuts.
Yes,
So it's amazing.
right. That's right. So that speaks to the roles that we play in life. So one very well-known effect is, and it works the other way as well, is the white coat effect. So if a doctor wears a white coat and sees somebody that they haven't seen before, they don't go and say, oh, there's Christian, he likes playing the piano, he's got a couple of kids and he likes going for walks. They go, oh my gosh, this is the doctor. And their blood pressure goes up simply because somebody is wearing a white coat. The other thing that a lot of people will see in society is, let's say, cyclists. People who wear, the lycra, the wonderful shoes. They've got all that they need for their bike. They've got the tight pants, and they look like a cyclist. Even though they're 73, they look like an Olympic cyclist. Now, that is not just commercial advertising. It's also because if I dress up like a cyclist, I feel that I can exercise better, and I will exercise better because I look the part. So those things are exactly the same as what happened in the Stanford prison experiments, that people take on a role, they put on clothes, and they start to think that they actually act like a different person. So we have this in all of us, and it speaks against the idea that we are all individuals, that we decide what we do. And the truth is that we influence each other. We go through life together, which brings me back to mentors. If you can choose your mentors, and let's say in martial arts, mentoring is a very, very special process where you get somebody who is not only good at a martial art, but has an attitude to life that you want to emulate. If you choose your mentors, then it's like putting on the coat or the clothing that will help you lead a better life or to live a better life, whatever that means to you as an individual.
Well, I mean, I would agree a million times in terms of the mentorship. If you got the wrong person or the right person, it makes a whole big difference. And we get to choose who those mentors are. We have the ability to do that. And if you don't like someone, usually you have tendencies. You enjoy somebody's version of whatever they do, and you become one of them, and you follow their footsteps, right? But I do want to touch on something that you talked about, which is like fathers and like parents and so on and so forth. But we are all in a role that we live every day. So like your point, we have multiple roles. I mean, you're your father, your husband, your coworker, your friend. But I'm going to talk about something very funny that happened to me as an experience, which is I went to an audition, literally for a movie audition. And so I went in, and I've never been to one, and I got into this thing. And so they give me a 2-minute script. And the thing was basically, it's a restaurant, and there's a client, and you're going to show them something about some drinks or whatever. So I kind of just read that and did it. And then when I did it, the guy said, "Can you do it again?" I'm like, "Okay." So I did the same. And he's like, "You did well." I'm like, "Okay." It's like, so I wasn't acting. So he said, "Well, what happens? Like, you give me a role, I was in a role. I mean, I just saw myself literally in that restaurant talking to someone. I wasn't trying to be there. I was just doing it." And the reason I'm talking about this, because in sales and training, we do the same thing. We do role play. And the role play is really, I take you as a client, and we're going to do like you are client, you act as a client, I act as an actual person in front of you, and we do this. So actors do this, for a living. They become the role. They become that character. They're not actually, they become one. And so they behave exactly as that person characteristics. And then therefore they give us that real performance that you feel it, you see it. It's just an amazing experience. And I'm sharing from personal, simple 2 minutes.
So I will go into the brain to explain some of what's going on there. Okay. Because there are two groups of people that you spoke about there. One is actors, people that become a character, right, to portray. And you did a bit of that. You also talked about sales, all right? And who are the people who become successful in sales? They're the people who like people, can make connections with people, and can get the idea across that, this is trustworthy, all right? So trust is a big thing in sales. So going into the brain, how does that work? Firstly, I'll talk about sales and trust. because all of that is mediated by the brain chemical oxytocin. And oxytocin mediates our feelings of trust, also our feelings of love. And mentorship, people that we want to be like, is a form of love. It's a connection, a human connection, and that feeling of, oh, that's a great guy. I want to grow up to be just like that. That's a form of love, and oxytocin is being flooded into the brain under those circumstances. Now, the thing is, when an actor becomes a character and portrays somebody that a playwright has put together, you go to the theater, you watch that actor, and you go, I can identify with that. I can see some of myself in that. Or, wow, I would like to be like that, or I would like to get closer to this character. And we know that it's an imagination, but that identification is also based on love. It is seeing what you yourself value, what you love in yourself, being projected out on stage. Now, there's a whole lot of other chemical processes that go on. It's what we call mirror neurons. It's when somebody is feeling something in their brain, you look at them, you make contact with them, and then the same part of your brain is being fired off. That connection that we have amongst people, and I suppose that's the theme for today, we are connected as people, Hurricane. It's all a form of love, and we can actually measure the brain chemicals, not just oxytocin, but also beta endorphin, which makes us feel together as part of the human race. Whenever we laugh together or cry together or are even angry together, and these are the sort of things that happen in the theatre, all that togetherness is mediated by beta endorphins, feeling together. And so that then influences our serotonin level because it feels good to be with other people. And all of these brain chemicals tend not to be as strongly released through the media, okay, through screens, okay? Like, let me put it this way, Hurricane. If we were sitting in the studio together in person, we would feel a closer bond than through what we're doing at the moment, even though what we're doing at the moment is fantastic. I don't want to take it away. We couldn't do it without it. But when I get into that studio with you, it'll be closer. We'll have those feelings of togetherness, that we're doing something together. And
well, first of all,
love, yeah.
Thank you, sir. Well, we will have that moment one day. I mean, I know you're not on stage, but no, we'll make it happen. We'll be together in one place. If you're in the States or if I'm in Australia, we're going to make sure our show is done from the same space.
We'll talk about that, yes.
Yes, sir. Well, so first of all, I didn't mention the names of the people who sent the questions. I kind of went through them. So the question about the experiment was from James from England.
Okay.
And I believe, let me see who else. We had David. Yeah, so that was it.
There's something else I need to say to James, because that's a huge issue, that documentary about how we take on roles. And what we learned through that is that there's a lot more going on inside us as human beings than we like to think, okay? And there's a lot more that has to do with how we interact with each other. And we are moving to this idea that our brains are actually connected, right? So one of my favorite parts of the brain is called the anterior cingulate gyrus, and it is a part of the brain that almost transmits feelings to each other. This is called empathy. So we grow to be like the people that we are around, and it's a very real phenomenon. So the idea is to choose the people that you're around, to choose what goes into your brain, because computer specialists know garbage in, garbage out, all right? But that also means good stuff into you will result in good stuff out of you. So if we can make choices to get good stuff into our brains, and the people that we interact with being helpful, and I like good people, I like to influence other people in a good way as well, then we're actually on this spiral of helping each other get through life.
Doctor, I have to say, you said a key word. You love to give good stuff to people and good vibes and good frequency and energy. I thrive on that. And, I hope that a lot more people do that every day and we can make a difference. And that's unfortunately, we see some of it, but not a lot of it. And I hope there's more. That's all.
Yes. Yes.
So Doctor, I have another question. And although, I do have a question that is literally past, meaning it was literally for February, and it was about, and we do have a little over 10 minutes. It was about the celebrating the Black History Month. So I know we passed in March, but if you don't mind, I want to just ask it because I want to make sure that our friend gets the response. Jamil, is that okay?
Yeah, Jamil. Yeah.
Yep. All right. So as we are celebrating Black History Month, we reflect on Black heritage, race, and racism in the U.S. My question is, what does racism do to a mind that is being subjected to it? What drives someone to feel superior than others? Very deep question.
They're huge questions. They're wonderful questions. And I suppose one thing that's really happening in today's world is we are grappling with these questions. And we are grappling with these questions ultimately because we want to make the world a better place, all right? I'd like a world without racism. I'd like a world where everybody gets a fair go. That's an Australian way of saying let's do without racism. I'd like to think that we can live in peace and harmony as people who are together. All right. So we're trying to do that. So what makes people feel like they are superior to other people? Unfortunately, one of the ways that evolution works is this idea of survival of the fittest, which brings in the idea of a hierarchy, that there are some choices that we can make that are better than others. There are some things that we can do that are better than others, but it also brings in the idea that some people are better than others, right? Mm. And that is fundamental because we all would like to find the best solution to whatever the problem is. If the problem is climbing the mountain, you will prepare to say, what's the best way to get up this mountain? Because our life is in danger. So we want to find the best one. The trouble is that there are a lot of ways up the mountain that could work, and it just becomes a matter of style or opinion as to how to get up that mountain, right? However, in a quest for being the fittest to survive, we start off having power hierarchies or dominance hierarchies, and people motivated to show that their way is better than other people's ways. So there's competition, which is not bad in itself. Anybody who enjoys sports enjoys competition. The thing is to find a society that can say, okay, if we have the competition and we find a way that is better, can we all move towards that together to help each other? Because when we look at the problems in life, right, if we use the mountain climbing analogy, the people who think they have overcome that problem have not overcome it so that others behind them don't overcome it. So the real way to overcome a problem is not overcoming a problem just for yourself, but also for everybody else. So in other words, to share knowledge and to share ways that work. And I got to say, that's a wonderful thing about social media because we can share those ways. This is sounding a bit cringe here, Hurricane, all right?
Well, Doctor, thank you. And so there's two things. I get the competition part, right? It's okay to be competitive, and that's part of life. You want to be, you want people, and it's equal, right? You want to compete, you just got to do more, right? You got to perform better, right? That's one thing. But like when it comes to race, people don't select their race. You're born into who you are, right? And it's a matter of you're being judged on what it is. I think that's what makes it a little bit more different. Yes. I didn't choose to be this, right? Or what my background is. And so therefore, why am I being subjected to something just because you happen to be this? It's not in reality, we are equal humanity. We can talk about it from an equal perspective, but as you said, the survival of the fittest, evolution, but it's what gives, I think that's really the question. It's a difficult, I'm sure we're not going to answer that question, but it's a tough one.
Okay, but I'm going to reframe it so that we look at the positive. Okay, let's look at the flip side of racism, right? Racism is saying that somebody is different from me and I will push them away, right? The flip side of racism is actually the idea of family. These people are special to me. These people are close to me. I am kind of like these people, and therefore the idea of family is that we're together. And two people who form a new family have to get to know each other and tolerate each other and accept each other and then even celebrate each other to become a family. So the challenge is not how do we stop racism, but the challenge is how do we become one big family? And we've actually got some science about this, Hurricane. The science is this. If we look at, let's say Chinese people who immigrated to the United States or to Australia, they met with persecution when they first came there. But then the people, let's say, of Sydney got curious about the Chinese people and about their food. And now we not only embrace Chinese people and their food and culture, around the world, we will even argue as to who has the best Chinatown. Is it San Francisco? Is it New York? Is it London? Is it Australia? I got to tell you, the best Chinatown is in Australia, of course, you know, because I'm in Australia and that's part of my family, right? But the point is that once we got to know Chinese people in Sydney, they were embraced and even celebrated, and they are now part of the culture. Now, this is actually the science of the mere exposure effect. And it was articulated in the 1960s by somebody called Robert Zedonk, who said, if we get to know people, if we get to spend time with them, we actually get to like them. And that has been shown to be true. One of the problems is in a society is we are all being asked to get to know people without enough time. The process that I talked about with the Chinese people, that took 100 years, okay? And over that time, we got to know and like the people. If you try to force people to get to know people and to like people, you can't force people to like them, so you end up with a word like tolerate, all right? We'll have to tolerate these people, which is not the same as liking people. So the way through something like racism, and I work a lot with people who have mental illness. How do you decrease stigma towards mental illness? Well, you give them a job, you invite them to work, you get to know them, and you go, you know what? Aside from this illness, you're a person just like me. And that experience of you're a person just like me is what brings families and makes them bigger. So these days at workplaces, you have like cultural ambassadors to make sure that people get on so that people feel they're part of a family. And whatever family it is, be it an actual family, a place of work, or a country, the culture is changing all the time. And the idea is to invite people into that family more and more and to celebrate the differences and even have a laugh about them. I know that's idealistic, but that's starting to happen.
Well, Doctor, you know, I love what you said, you know, but let's turn into the positive, because we do live in a global village, if you want to call it that way. I mean, this globe of ours. I mean, you're in the future. I'm in the past. You know, you're on the other side. You're in literally different season than ours, right? But yet we are connected right here, and we connected literally through the world with all these channels that we're live right now into the social media. I mean, people literally, I'm looking at them from different parts, especially on Instagram, different parts of the world. And what it does is that we are a human family.
Yes.
And we all are striving for the same stuff, you know, to live happy, to have, you know, some sort of a good income, good money, whatever, live a certain life and enjoy everything. So that's the thing. So I think, if, to your point, if we start thinking from that ideology of we are one humankind, we are all, you know, sharing the same family, on this planet, we should be able to coexist better. Not so much to tolerate, because to your point, tolerate is like, I am just absorbing you. That's kind of like right. I see. Yeah. You know, I shouldn't be absorbing someone. I should be just embracing someone for who they are, and that's it. And so it's a big difference in how you look at it. Now, I get it. There's always going to be a percentage of people that just going to remain who they are and how they see the world from their lens. But I still believe that the larger majority now is open to diversity, to open to change, to different. And I think that's been, you know, a great, you know, but again, it took centuries. The least.
So let's take another example. The British and the Indians were at war with each other in the 1940s. Okay, but if you look at the cultures now, the Indians love their cricket. Where did they get that from? The British love their Indian cuisine, particularly in London. All right, it's full of Indian restaurants. Where did they get that from? And the idea is because they become more a part of a global family and we allow each other to influence each other, we can actually take the best so that we all win. Not that everybody can win at cricket. We will still have those competitions, all right? But we can all eat food together and share meals together, and we can share and celebrate being part of that family. And if we were able to get more of that family mindset, perhaps we'd be able to move towards solving some of the larger problems that we have in this world.
Well, thank you. Well, actually, you just brought a subject that we covered a few months ago with the World Cup, where the whole world came on into 1 month's event, and everybody was having a good time. Everybody was cheering each other, and it was. But I mean, while it's ideal, it is realistic because it's happening. We can do this. The problem is, like, it's funny. I always say this. I go on cruises, and in a cruise ship, you have at least a few, a couple of 20, 30 nationalities that are literally every time, if not more. In some trips, I've had 200 nationalities that were actually announced, and and everybody is literally. I don't know if there's 200 countries, but maybe there's less. I think it's one something. But the idea is, like, there were so many diversified groups in there and backgrounds, and they're all got along well. And everybody's cooperating, everybody's smiling, everybody's happy. I don't know if it's just being a hypocrite, and I'm not judging. But they're doing it. Even if you do it as a hypocrite, even if you just do it a face, it still works to a degree. I mean, it may not be genuine, but would like it to be genuine. But it makes a difference, right? At least people are, and they're almost, to your point, they're open to the idea of, oh, I never talked to someone from this country. I mean, people tell me, like, oh, I never met someone from Morocco.
Yeah,
I get that all the time. In some parts. Oh, really? Wow. How is it? How does it look like? Well, I'm from the States, but I am originally from Morocco, and I can talk to you about it. It's exotic. It's got all these things. And so it changes the dynamics, right? And it gives you a discussion. I think different is curious. I mean, it gives you that opportunity to talk to someone. So
curiosity is so wonderful. Curiosity is what can drive us to be closer together, because the more I find out about you, and the science shows this, the more I will actually like you. It's if I put a barrier and say, I'm not like that, and I'm not going to find out anything about that, that's when things go awry. But curiosity lends itself to beta endorphin release in our brain, which unites us as people.
Yeah, doctor, I thought you were going to say curiosity killed the cat. I'm just kidding. Yeah, that was good. That would see the difference between me and you. So that's how I think. Endorphins. I love it. But it's fun, right? I mean, it's really, but it's interesting how it is. I mean, again, we could live a happy life. We could be, like each other for who we are, and that's the other thing. I think I always put people in two buckets: the good or the bad. And even the bad, they have a bad time. As you said, they're just going through something, right? So it's not like we're not generally bad by default. We just get tendencies to become bad. And again, that bad also is a big definition, and it could be just bad temporary, it could be bad forever. but the idea is that we don't have to be necessarily that way. So but so thank you for touching on this subject. I mean, we could spend hours on this topic. It's difficult, it's hard, but it means a lot to people.
It does. It's very
huge.
Yeah. So I'm not going to open things up at the end of something, but you're right. We could spend a long time on these things, and they do have to do with how we interact as people, and that's where the psychiatry comes in, because our minds, our brains are connected, and so to know that we have a connection and that huge chunks of our brain are actually put there, designed, or exist, or have evolved so that we get on with other people, is actually a useful piece of information. Our brains are actually wired so that we interact with other people and we start to understand other people. Well, with that, Doctor, I think we just went over the hour.
So I listen. I never can get enough from you. So I can be with you for the whole day, and I'm not gonna get tired. So that will be it. But I know you have other better fish to fry, as they say, and other things to do. And like I said, your time is valuable. And it's getting late here. You're just starting your day over there.
Yep. Yep.
But I appreciate the time. I appreciate the responses, and I know that the folks are getting their juice. And folks, again, we do want you to interact with us. Don't be shy. Call in, send in, put a mouse or something, a picture. But we just want to hear from you and see you live with us. So just do this. Join the discussion. It is for you, and you can. If it's not for you, for someone you might know that can actually benefit from the discussion. So thank you. So, Doctor, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you very much, Hurricane.
All right, folks. This is it for today. We'll be talking, and just we catch the next tree prom with Dr. Heim. Time for mental health. The last Friday of April. So stay tuned.